Hello, everybody. Patricia Worby, Alchemy Therapies, My Emotional Audit, and now emotionalmasterclass.com. And I wanted to talk today about neurological re-regulation and how we can rebalance our nervous system and what to look out for. Because I've had an amazing week of working with people, and there have been some very interesting responses that people have been having to some of the work we're doing. Because remember, your autonomic nervous system not only controls kind of how you emotionally regulate, but it also is a physiological regulator of your internal organs, as well as controlling blood flow. I mean, there's very little the autonomic nervous system doesn't control, to be honest. And when we're working to resolve trapped emotions in the body, because emotions have a necessary movement, it's usually from below to up and out of your body. They need to do that in order to be fully experienced and felt and processed. Things get in the way to block that. Maybe we fear being overwhelmed by our emotions, or we feel we won't cope or won't manage them. And so we block them psychologically. We kind of distract ourselves, or we dissociate, or we numb. When you allow yourself to fully feel some of the things that have happened to you in safe connection, which is what I do with people, we often get releasing signals that are very strange when you first come across them. So things like you may go hot and cold, you may sweat suddenly, have sort of like a hot sweat, which is autonomic. You may get pins and needles as things start to release. Actually, pins and needles is a good sign because it shows that it's a kind of tingly feeling of new neurons actually growing. It's the tiny little connections between neurons are actually forming. It means you're rebalancing yourself. A dead feeling is usually maybe a numbness is usually where that signal is blocked in some way, and we can dissociate parts of our body because maybe we've had an injury on that side that we haven't fully emotionally processed, or we were hit or held or restrained in some way, even in surgery. Those feelings can be held onto, but as we release them, the autonomic balance changes and the blood flow comes back. The energy also goes back into your nerves, and so pins and needles can be as a response to letting go or releasing what's been held in you. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. If I'd heard myself saying any of this 10 years ago, I'd have laughed myself out the room. As a trained scientist in biochemistry and physiology and pharmacology, I had no understanding of the autonomic nervous system. And that's shocking, isn't it? Because I went through some very distinct and in-depth training at university level. But I've come to understand it through self-study and also through my experiences, both myself and working with people, and realize that the body kind of speaks to us in a language of its own, which is governed by the autonomic nervous system, which doesn't have a language of words. It only can control certain things. It can control blood flow and nervous system impulses, and that's what it does. And so when we understand that some of the symptoms we're getting are a result of a blocked system or an imbalanced system, and that some of these more strange conditions, like, as I've said, the kind of pins and needles feeling heavy or light, feeling hot or cold, are actually signs that everything is trying to restore us to healthy functioning, we lose the fear that something terrible is going wrong. Before making this podcast, I had a look online to see if there was anything I could find about pins and needles as a sign of restoration. I found one article. Most of them talk about peripheral neuropathy, which is the term given to nerve damage in the peripheral. Anything that's not your viscera basically is considered the periphery, your arms, legs, head, neck. And so they're all signs of damage according to what you read online. So you may then panic that something's terribly wrong, but actually you're getting a new message, a new signal. Now, if that's done in a clinical setting with a trained trauma-informed therapist, you actually can learn to release without fear, and then everything can restore. Now, if you read stuff online and get very obsessed about what it all means without being guided, you may actually re-embed the trauma, because then you're afraid of your own body. And that's where people get when they get stuck in illness. Chronic illness often has a lot of anxiety associated with it, because the symptoms themselves are misinterpreted as the body trying to harm us, or we've failed in some way and we're getting worse and we're going to die, or we're going really seriously downhill. And that's where I was with sort of in that anxiety loop of overthinking, over focusing on symptoms as the problem, where actually symptoms are the body's attempt to restore your health. And they get stuck, they absolutely do, and people can end up ill for years and sometimes even decades. But I just wanted to illuminate that this language of the body is one that we need to learn, and we need to kind of tune into our nervous system in order to help heal it. And that can only be done by allowing yourself to feel things that maybe you've avoided all these years. Anger, rage, sorrow, grief, guilt, shame are all the kind of uncomfortable feelings that we get from experiences that happened to us that weren't supported, that weren't held, that we weren't encouraged to metabolize or transform. And so they actually live on in us as conditioned responses to similar situations in our adulthood. And so we end up replaying some of our childhood experiences, but we're completely unconscious of that. And we think we're making rational decisions, and we're absolutely not. So it's a very important technique to learn, to listen to your body in a way that feels compassionate, allowing, and graceful, dare I say, just allowing this message to come through in a way that is not obstructing your body's attempt to heal you. And so being in a state of grace, which is a difficult one to explain outside of maybe the religious connotation, is one in which you are accepting of what's happening without fear, and just allowing it to teach you what it needs to teach you. Certainly that's my definition. And grace is achievable in normal human life. It's not something you have to wait to die to experience. But it is hugely beneficial to work with somebody who is able to release this for you, or is able to hold the space for you while you release yourself. And that's what I do. And I just wanted to explain a little bit more about that, because I think people are very, very afraid of symptoms, and symptoms are just the body's way of communicating whatever's out of balance. So there you have it. Very short video today, but just wanted to explain that. Do check out some of my other videos. I've talked about Alice in Wonderland syndrome, for instance, which is where the neurological signals get really garbled and distort your view of your body and where it is in space and how big it is. I'll include a link in the description here. But if there's any other things that you're interested to ask me, please put your questions in the comments below. I'll be happy to respond. All right, take care, everyone. Bye for now.